Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Thank you for joining Zoom In with Renee. Today, my guest is Dr. RamKumar Kutty from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu in India. Dr. RamKumar Kutty is an Ayurvedic medicine doctor, and he is the director of Punarnava Ayurveda, which runs the Vaidyagrama Ayurveda Healing Village. Thank you very much, Dr. RamKumar Kutty, for joining us today. Namaste, namaste. I wanted to talk to you about manovikara, or mental health disorder, we say in Ayurveda, and how Ayurveda becomes a pivot in addressing whether it's grief or depression or anxiety or any mental health disorders, even the serious ones, bipolar, schizophrenia. Because we see globally, there's a mental health pandemic. I mean, it's 1 in 15 in any given year are going to have a mental health issue. 1 in 6 somewhere in their lifetime will have depression. And in the United States, it's 1 in 10 will have a mental health disorder. And 1 in 5 anytime in their lives will go through depression and grief. And it cuts across the world. And how do we address this from a non-pharmacological approach and integrate Ayurveda in our lives?
Thank you, Dr. Renee, for having me on this show. Yes, the mind is a vast subject, and Ayurveda talks extensively about the mind, the qualities of the mind, the nature of the mind, the functions of the mind, the objects of the mind. It goes into it in pretty great detail. Now, when Ayurveda even starts talking about health and disease, it first talks about the mind and then the body, and views almost all conditions as psychosomatic, starting in the mind, moving to the body, or starting in the body, moving to the mind, and then the body. So it becomes a vicious cycle into which we get. For example, maybe there is a pain in some part of the body, which is actually physiological. But the suffering of that pain is in the mind. And as we keep suffering, the mind exaggerates the pain. And so we get into this loop from which it is very difficult to extricate ourselves from. So the text will talk extensively about the mind. It will talk about the different emotions in the mind and how we tend to hold on to these emotions and they get lodged or suppressed in the mind-body complex, leading to different kinds of mental and physical health issues over a period of time. As we talk, I am inclined to go into the Ramayana. Ramayana is an epic. In India, you have the two great epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And it is that Rama, the central figure in Ramayana, who was an elevated soul, a learned soul, who by the age of 16 had studied extensively, had garnered a lot of wisdom, but he still went into a state of mind where he felt it was useless to pursue anything. He was the prince. He was the prince of Ayodhya, a kingdom. And he felt that, after learning everything, he was wondering, why are people so connected with the senses and the sense objects? Why are they so governed or controlled by the ego? Why does the mind control the body? In fact, there's a beautiful passage where he says, the mind feeds off the body. It gets nourished by making the body attached to the sense objects, gets nourished by it, but dumps all its emotions and pain on the physical body. There is actually a passage where Rama says this in a text called the Yoga Vasishta. And so he says, why should we even bother to do anything when everything is predestined? Why do we eat? Why do we run after wealth? Why do we build homes? All those questions that come to many people today. The only difference being that for him, it came from a space of wisdom, and to many of us, it comes from a space of ignorance. So the state of mind was similar. He was hardly eating anything. He lost a lot of weight. He was hardly sleeping. He was not inclined to doing anything. Many of these symptoms seem very familiar to many of us who have either been through a mental health issue or have had people suffering from mental health issues in our immediate surroundings. And so, leaving that, we come back to Ayurveda. This is exactly what Ayurveda talks about, all the way ignorance precipitates desire and aversion, and that leads us into a space where we are completely in the grip of the sense objects. The senses are the eyes, the ears, the nose, the skin, and the tongue. And the sense objects are, the tongue loves food, the eyes love beautiful visuals, the ears want to hear a lot of sound or music, and so on. So we get so enthralled or captivated by the sense objects that we gradually get distanced or separated from who we really are. And in that context, many of the emotions start taking over. The Bhagavad Gita will say the desire leads to anger, because unfulfilled desires means there is anger, and when the anger builds up, we get deluded, we get blinded by anger. We are no longer thinking clearly, and when we are no longer thinking clearly, our memory fails us, and when the memory fails us, the discerning intellect no longer functions, and when the discerning intellect no longer functions, then that is the starting point of destruction or degeneration of the body and the mind. This is in the Bhagavad Gita. In Ayurveda, a similar pathophysiology is described for the onset of disease, whether it is mind or body or both together.
So you rightly said we look at the stress of the body, but it's coming from the mind. And we're looking at it from a space of wisdom, or we're looking at it from a space of ignorance. And we're looking at it from ignorance, that's because we are covered with matter, illusion. So that's coming from a space of ignorance. Once we know who we truly are, I think that's when the space of wisdom gets in. And that's when we can make the pivot in our healthcare. So looking at it from a perspective of detoxing the mind, cleansing the mind, I think that's when we can de-stress, because everybody has stressors. It could be job, it could be workplace, it could be family, it could be relationships. So, and how do you manage it from a space of wisdom, from a space of understanding how we can negate the negativity and those thoughts that are coming in. So I think the whole thing comes back to detoxing the mind, cleansing the mind. And that's where I think Ayurveda plays a very pivotal role, whether it's a simple stress that becomes chronic stress, grief, depression, anxiety, or even more serious disorders.
Absolutely. And that is exactly why Ayurveda gives a one-line description of how to manage all conditions relating to the mind. The text will say in Sanskrit, and I have to say it in Sanskrit because I think it's nice for people to hear, Dhi Dhairya Atma Di Vijnanam Mano Dosh Aushadham Param. To explain it, Mano Doshas are the doshas or the impurities of the mind. The mind has got three qualities, primarily Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. A clear state of mind, active state of mind, and a restful state of mind when they are in harmony. But many a time, the clear state is clouded. As I said earlier, we get blinded by anger, we get blinded by desire, and we move into this delusion wherein we are no longer able to think clearly. And consequently, the active state of mind becomes an agitated, angry, restless state of mind, or the restful state of mind becomes a lazy, lethargic, indolent, depressive state of mind. So we start functioning more and more in these two states of mind, the aggressive or the depressive states of mind. And so these two states are called the impurities or the doshas of the mind. And so what is the solution at managing them? We can always talk about herbs and panchakarma and treatments and all of them. But the three specific modalities that have been described are, the first is practices to develop a discerning intellect, to move into the clear state of mind, to be able to think clearly between what is true and not true, right and wrong, good and bad, real and unreal. That is the first step. We have to look at practices which will take us there. The second step is practices which will help us to develop a willpower, a determination, a conviction to stay with the practices. Because many a time we start and then we stop. We give up very soon. So these practices that we engage in, and we will come to what some of these practices could be, should help us to develop the determination and conviction even when there appears no light at the end of the tunnel. Even at that time, we need to be patient, persistent, perseverant, and keep going. That is the kind of determination and conviction that we need to develop or help people around us to develop. And the third and the most important, in my opinion, is what is a constant learning process. Many of us stop learning at some point of time, or we have stopped learning. And when I say learning, we are not talking about learning some engineering subjects or medical subjects, but learning about who we are, learning about the connectedness between man and the universe, man and the environment, learning about different kinds of relationships. It is about a much deeper learning process about the body, the mind, the consciousness, the relationship between all of them. All of this is very important if we have to, over a period of time, move out of the clutches of all the emotions that surround us, which lead us into, more serious mental health issues. We need to be constantly in this clear space of thinking with the determination and the conviction, and backed by a wisdom about ourselves.
Right.
So like you said earlier, moving into a space of wisdom.
So I think then we're talking about mindful of our thoughts, of our emotions, of our cognitive functioning. And most importantly, I think if we have to go within, we have to learn to meditate and take that journey to still our mind And that, as you said, it's a constant process as well to still the mind, to negate that negativity. And I think meditation plays a very, very critical role in our lives.
Yes and no, because for many of us, meditation is not easy. You know, sitting still is itself a challenge.
Takes a while,
And
takes practice.
practice. And then once we get to sit still, then keeping the mind from jumping from one thought to the other again takes a lot of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So once we are able to still the body and then still the mind, it is at that point that we can even begin thinking about meditation. So while meditation is very important, let us look at, for example, what was Rama advised in this epic called the Ramayana when he went through his issues. He was advised, initially he was told, don't put all your faith in destiny, because many times when we are in that lost space, we think, oh, let whatever has to happen. We are not in control. Whatever we do, things are not working out for us. So, we start blaming, or we start putting the onus of responsibility of whatever is happening to us on the world around us, on all the extraneous factors. So here he's saying, your actions of today are supreme and they are the most important. Don't think about what has happened in the past. Don't think about what is going to happen in the future. Today, here and now, do whatever you need to do. These are very powerful words, because many of us are either thinking about the past or projecting into the future. Whereas what is required is for us to be as present as possible and be grateful and enjoy every current moment of our lives.
So and being in the moment, just being in the moment. And a lot of grace comes by being in the moment. And you talked about gratitude. What would you suggest for strengthening our mind to become more calm and composed, besides meditation, and also strengthening our immune system, so that we are able to cope with grief and tension? And it takes a while. It's not going to happen like a magic wand. Today I'm grief-stricken. In a week I'm going to be okay. It's not going to happen. It's a process. It takes its time.
I think what is even more important is a concept in Ayurveda called dinacharya, or daily routine, or daily practices.
Mm-hmm.
And the daily practices include everything we do from morning to evening, and then again from evening to the next day morning. It includes from the time we wake up, the cleansing of all the senses, engaging in some kind of movement or asana practice, engaging in some kind of slow, deep breathing practices, sitting still for maybe even 3-4 minutes every day. The kind of food we eat is very important, because if we are looking at creating a clear state of mind, and we don't want an agitated or depressive state of mind, then we definitely need to be looking at the food we eat. In terms of the food, many of us today eat a lot of processed food, packaged food, reheated food, old food, food that has traveled long distances, as opposed to eating local, seasonal, freshly harvested, freshly prepared, warm food. Many of us are more in the packaged food space. And all of these packaged, processed, reheated food or refrigerated food that has been sitting for a long time are mostly working on the aggressive depressive states of the mind. They are mostly increasing either of the aggressive depressive states of the mind. So what are we looking for in the food we eat? We're looking for, while the modern world will talk about different kinds of nutrition, in Ayurveda, we are primarily looking at getting good prana from the food. Prana being the life force which enables us to live well, that which will enable the mind to think clearly. And that comes from food that is preferably home cooked with a lot of love, eaten with a lot of love in silence, and eaten in quantities that are easily assimilable, easily digestible. Because in one context, Ayurveda even says food makes the mind. So if the food we eat is not of the right quality, it is not going to nourish the mind, and on the contrary, it may even increase the agitated or depressive states of the mind. So that is the first thing we need to be looking at. And when we talk about good food, even some of the grains like rice or wheat or fruits, vegetables, all of these, some of the lentils, all of these fall in the category of foods that can actually nourish the mind well. Even some of the spices in much smaller quantities, whether ginger, turmeric. Today, of course, there's a big movement against milk and milk products, but Ayurveda loves milk from a cow which has been looked after well and grass-fed and not given any of those injections or from or what you call the A2 milk. If it is available, that is a great source of nourishment for the mind. So once we are eating the right food in the right quantity at the right time, and it's getting digested, absorbed, assimilated, and the toxins are being eliminated, that nourishes the mind considerably. Then continuing in the daily practices, the work we do, we all need to work, but the work should be something that makes us happy. It should not be something that stresses us out too much. So we should be enjoying what we are doing through the day. The relationships we build in our workplace, at home, family, friends. These all should be easy for us. It should not be an effort to build a relationship or to sustain a relationship, to keep trying to second guessing what the other person will think or not think if I act in a particular way or do not act in a particular way. Relationships have to be easy, and it should be with an understanding that none of us are perfect. We all are fallible. We all make some mistakes. So the ability to forgive, to forget, to support is very important. One of the big lacunae we all face in our lives today is a good supportive environment. Traditionally, there were joint families. Traditionally, there was a group in which we could easily share and also support. So there was a mutual sharing and support at home and in different circles, which itself to a great extent decimated stress and prevented us from moving into depression or anxiety or other such states. Ayurveda also puts a lot of emphasis on good rest. Rest is something that is missing in the lives of many of us today. We do not give the importance to rest that should be given. And by rest, I don't necessarily mean sleep, but even the ability to just be for a few minutes or a few hours without doing anything is a great way to strengthen both the body and the mind, to improve the immunity, to improve the clarity of the thought process. All of this can happen if we get sufficient rest. So a daily routine, which is reasonably disciplined. There may be times when we are not able to follow it exactly, but it should, if we are not in a routine most of the time, that is a shock to the system. It shocks the body, shocks the mind. The body and mind lose their ability to receive well. But when we are in a routine, the body and mind are better prepared to receive food, to receive emotions, to digest emotions. All of this happens better when we are in a reasonable routine from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed.
How do you further enhance the receptivity? Because that is an important component in healing. Talking of a nurturing environment, and many times living by yourself, because in olden times there were people lived together, joint families. Now, even with the pandemic, of course, it's behind us, hopefully. But there was a lot of isolation, and that only exacerbated a lot of issues in mental health. So let's say somebody's living by themselves and they don't have that nurturing relationship or people close to them. Then how are they going to enhance their receptivity and heal?
So if ideally we want at least one person in our lives with whom we can share unconditionally, who will hear us out unconditionally and handhold us through all the different journeys that we undertake. We should ideally have at least one person. It can be a friend, it can be a partner, it can be a family member, it can be an office colleague, anybody. Or these days, I think, something that is happening nicely is that there are a lot of support groups in different ways. There are, like, for example, those who are into alcohol addictions, there is a AA group, Alcoholics Anonymous group, which is a nice supportive group meeting at least once a week. Many spiritual forums across all religions do give this support, if you're able to find the right forum to be a part of. I think yoga studios are also a great place which can give this support. So there are spaces that we can find out. Now, even if we don't have access to any of this, today, I think there is enough information out there on the World Wide Web, which we can access even when we are all alone, which can help us to learn a little more about some of these principles and facts and practices, and keep us engaged in practices on a daily basis. Operating good breathing exercises. If you want to be a little more advanced, pranayama is great, but generally it's nice to have guidance when we go into more advanced practices. But even the simple breathing is such a great practice for many of us in terms of clearing the mind, in terms of moving more into a clear state of the mind. So it's just a matter of either helping ourselves or having somebody to help us, and our ability to trust in them. Again, I think one of the big challenges in the modern world is we have many a time lost the ability to trust. There is this word in Sanskrit called Shraddha. Shraddha is the ability to trust in the words of a teacher or the scriptures without any doubt and follow it completely. So the teacher can be, like I said, one person in our life, whom we can trust unconditionally, or look for information in the scripture. There's enough information out there which we have access to today. So I know that if I'm all alone and I am in depression, it is very challenging to access both a friend and the information. But that is where I think from a very early age, I need to learn to share, to trust in people, trust in myself, and trust in people around me.
Right. That's so very important. Trust, I think, is very important to move on in life. And if you can have one person that you can share your trust, could be your partner, could be your friend, as you said, your coworker, or you can join a spiritual group or a support group. And I don't think we have to share everything with everyone, but maybe with a few selected people, or with just one person that we can trust, and we can move on so that we're able to get back on track. So life doesn't get that complicated. And then again, we are coming from a space of wisdom and not from a space of ignorance. I think that is very, very important. And that means a discerning intellect. And so we need to strengthen that mind. And I think I still go back to, have that quiet time into ourselves, so that downtime really helps us to heal and get back and recalibrate and rewire our thinking and our brain, and have that shift in our thinking that this too will pass. I think that's such an important line, to realize that all this is transitory and this is impermanent, and nothing is going to last forever, whether it's good times or bad times. So being in that moment, not thinking of what happened and not thinking of what will happen, but staying in the present and having that positivity and that quiet time to heal ourselves and to nurture ourselves, and that the child within is able to grow back and become more creative again.
Two more simple points would be: one is remembering that perfection is a destination, not the beginning of the journey.
Right.
Today, many of us put unrealistic expectations on ourselves and on those around us. We expect that we have to be perfect, and we expect people around us to be perfect. And whenever we see traces of imperfection, we immediately give up or move on to the next person, or we find it very difficult to trust in a person. So that is something that we need to remember, that perfection is a destination. And on this journey to perfection, we all will fall multiple times. All we need to do is pick ourselves up, or allow somebody else to hold out their hand, and we catch that hand to get up. This is something we should remember. The second important point is contentment. We all talk about happiness, but contentment is very important, because today, perhaps it also has to do a lot with the way we are schooled today. We are never content. We are always desiring for more, yearning for more. I'm never able to be happy and content with what I have here and now. If for those who have studied yoga and remember the niyamas of yoga, the second niyama is called santosha. Santosha is contentment. Learning to be content with whatever is there. We can keep persevering. We can keep, persevering for higher goals, higher achievements. But where I am, when I am on a trek, every step that I move higher, I should be able to stand there, look around me, and enjoy that movement. Because at every step, there is an achievement. It is not that only the top of the cliff is the only place where I should be happy or content. But at every step of the journey, there is a lot of beauty around me. There's a lot of achievement in me, and I need to learn to be content with what I have here and now. So these are again two very important steps when we talk about how we deal with the mind. So whenever we talk to people who have health issues in the mind, there is in Ayurveda we talk about sattva vajaya chikitsa, or a process of strengthening the mind, helping people to learn how to be content, how to be present, how to be aware, how to engage in daily practices, and then, where required, select herbs based on the individual's need. There are many herbs that, like ashwagandha, which are popular in the West. There is ashwagandha, there is amla, there is brahmi, there is jatamansi. There are so many different single herbs and formulations which, based on the individual specific need, can be given in appropriate doses for specific periods of time. If required, after a cleansing process, after a physical cleansing process, this also supports that journey to recovery from common mental disorders.
Now, you mentioned something besides the herbs, contentment. I really wanted to go back to it. We always complain, that is a human tendency, complaining about what we don't have, never thank what we have. And I think once we go in that kind of thinking, a lot of things can change. And when you talk sunset, for me, personally for me, I think it's beautiful. It makes me feel so peaceful. Sunrise, different energy. Again, it's thank you, God. And then sunset, the beautiful colors and the hues that come out, I just stare at them. It gives you such a peace of mind and contentment. You say, thank you, God, again. So I think being grateful and being content with what we have doesn't mean we have to be passive, but makes you understand that, hey, there are other people who may be even less fortunate than I am. So let's be happy and let's thank the universe for this. Depression, mental health disorders, be genetic as well. It could be a chemical imbalance and could be environment. So if it is genetic, is it a little bit more difficult to heal? And what is the Ayurveda approach to it?
Well, like I said, yes, where it is genetic, it is certainly a little more challenging. What we do see is that by many of these physical cleansing processes and the appropriate use of judiciously combined herbs, along with the diet and lifestyle and a good support system, many of these conditions are very well managed. When they are not genetic, they are certainly a little easier to manage. Environment, as you said, plays a big role today. And when we say environment, we're not just talking about environmental pollution, but even the people environment around us, like in Ayurveda, the Sanskrit word for one of the Sanskrit words for health is sukha, and sukha literally means good space. A good internal and external environment goes a long way in creating physical and mental well-being. So we think that if from a very early age, children are brought into this dinacharya or daily routine mode. While speaking about daily practices, I forgot to mention elimination. Elimination is such an important part of our daily practices, which unfortunately, I think a lot of people do not eliminate well, do not eliminate every single day. And ideally, early morning, as soon as we wake up, if we are able to eliminate well, that itself is a great way of clearing the channels in the body. So training children from an early age in many of these practices is a great place to begin to help children not to move into the space where they are, hugely competitive, self-destructive. Today attention deficit issues are there. So many different problems are coming because from a very early age, children are not schooled in the right set of daily practices on a regular basis.
And then your daily regimen, dinacharya, and then seasonal ritucharyas, and having the right mindset, yoga, meditation, all this it's integrated in our life. I think we are on the road to heal ourselves, and your Vaidyagrama Ayurveda Healing Village brings a lot of students as well as a lot of clients there to heal. And I think once we heal from within, then we're able to heal ourselves. And I strongly believe on a personal level, if you're spiritually healthy, you'll be mentally and physically healthy as well. So our spiritual state of mind plays a very pivotal role. It's like that body has its own inner pharmacy. Positive affirmations, positive visualization really works.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so very much, Dr. RamKumar Kutty. Dr. RamKumar Kutty, Director of Punarnava Ayurveda, which is in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu in India. And he runs the Vaidyagrama Ayurveda Healing Village. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Stay healthy, stay positive.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.